Hi, I'm Kawa, and this is QWA Podcast. In this show, we invite friends from the architectural fraternity for a casual conversation. From design think tank to integrated practice, we discuss the trials and tribulations of architectural pursuit. We hope this informal sharing will spark conversation among the listeners. Let's begin. Hello and good morning, everyone. Here with me today, we have Kartini Kasmuri, and today we're going to talk about architecture education. Obviously, post COVID-19 is changed so much, and I think a year has passed since we last spoke. How are you doing today, Tini?
Hi, good morning. Assalamualaikum.
Um,
First of all, well, I'm doing great, a bit dry in the throat. But yeah, before anything, thank you very much for having me. It's such a delight to have, to keep in touch. Like you
yeah,
said, I think it was exactly a year, right? It was in the KLAF
yep.
event, KLAF 19. Um, but life goes on. With
So,
MCO now.
yeah. So maybe with a little background, I was her junior back in school, and some of the few interaction that we had was the urban design workshop in Berlin, and ultimately she went to Spain to continue her master in international cooperation and sustainability emergency architecture. And now she's working as an academic, and I think this is sort of like an extension of that CLAF speak or lecture that you gave last year. So let's get right to it. COVID 19 definitely has changed how we work, and architecture now, the relevancy of architecture has not been challenged. So for young school leavers, maybe in secondary school, something like that, do they still have an appeal towards an architecture education, knowing that people are staying at home, the office is no longer in use, shopping mall is underused, and other public spaces are also no longer usable during the pandemic.
Well, I think this this whole situation makes us pause and think, right, what our priorities are. So I think it's not really a matter of architecture losing its appeal, but rather creating an appeal in a whole different realm. Um, so it's like, even at school now, we are slowly addressing, you know, like sudden changes in society. We've always been talking about long term effects of societal change. Like
Mm-hmm.
housing, and how the political scene, the economy, the social changes affects all of these issues. But I think now it makes us it makes us how do I say that? How do I put this? It makes us feel that there is more to this just big picture. So you start to think about problems or about issues inside out nowadays. And I think it takes a whole lot of different applications, of what we think we knew about architectural theories, about problem solving, being applied from the inside out. So I think and that plus technological advancement, I think there is no way that we can detach ourselves from that now. And it's no longer just the Gen Z's bringing in this different point of views and different cultures, but really using technology to be very much infused and integrated into how we approach architectural problem solving. Yeah, so I think you know well, it sounds a bit complicated, I think,
Right.
for school leavers at this point, but think of it like this. It's no longer just about building structures to create a statement.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's more so to think what statement inspires these structures. What statements can be translated and interpreted. So I think this is part of like this architectural activism. The core of it, I think, is going to be largely driven by activism in the architectural scene. So it's all about conscience, about awareness,
Right.
being the drive towards architectural solutions. Yeah.
Yeah, I still think that there will still new challenges post COVID in terms of spatial design, and I think architect has a pivotal role to address those concerns. But I noticed that this is like in a informal session, architects usually deter or sort of said that, oh, maybe with a pessimistic tone, that maybe you should not go into architecture because it's overbearing, taxing to your body and soul. So, in your opinion, what kind of counter argument can we offer to appeal to these school leavers, knowing maybe architecture there's no it's all work and no fun.
Is it? Come on.
Maybe I don't know for some people.
I don't know. Can I say I agree to that? Well, not entirely lah. I agree to some parts of that statement, but I think at the end of it, you put the worth into what you do. So even if people say, whether they be it from the professional realm or just general public, saying that it's not worth all the effort and all the blood, sweat and tears. I think it's unfair to say that because you don't know, they don't know for yourself why you are doing this and why you are getting into this particular profession out of the billions of professions that exist in this world. And I think as an individual, of course, struggles and challenges and ups and downs are very very expected. But I think it also, in architecture per se, I think the challenge is because the nature of the profession is that it's multifaceted. You're always trying to solve everybody's problem from all the possible angles as possible. So there's no choice but to be multifaceted yourself. So, you're not only trained to draw properly, to produce beautiful things, to create, innovation, but you really have to balance your left and right brains. I know it sounds like a cliche, but that's why, architecture is neither science nor art. It's this very gray area where, sorry?
Yeah, agree.
Yeah. Right, it's a very gray area, but in that gray area you can get all these different colors and different hues of gray, so that's a lot of opportunity there. I think the problem is, or I think that stigma is is formed when a student doesn't know what they're getting into, or a potential student doesn't know what they're getting into at the beginning of the journey. Maybe because lack of research, or maybe you don't talk to people from the profession enough, maybe you don't talk to architecture students enough, so you kind of just jump into it without knowing how deep the pool is. So I think that mindset, you cannot have that mindset before doing all the works in trying to find out for yourself.
I would say this is one of the few courses that require some lifestyle change, and so there is a repetitive list of the hardest university course. And usually architecture top the list. So now, since that paradigm has been continuously spewed in social media, but on the ground, I would say there's a gap of people actually wanting good results, or students wanting good results, but eventually decided to do a very minimal, just to survive this grade or just to get through this semester. But since the impending pandemic, and we have conducted the teaching and learning through remote teleconference app, and students have to kind of manage themselves. What are the impact of this online class or learning and teaching has been on their work quality? What is their impact?
Okay, interesting that you should mention that, because I think more than the impact on the work quality,
Mm-hmm.
I think before it impacted their work, it actually impacted their state of mind. So we were really addressing some serious issues about, mental health, anxiety, depression, and so on. So I mean, obviously, this not having a studio environment in the
Mm-hmm.
first place limits your ability to, peer learning and,
Yeah.
to kind of have that human touch. But I feel that it's both hardware and, the lack of human touch. You have students who are who have all the access to the best internet connection, the best computers, the best environment, the best space in your own home to work. But you
Mm-hmm.
also have students who are not that privileged or that lucky to have
Right.
all this, and they're just trying to get by, with all the distractions at home. And that really put everyone in a bind, because everyone has now a shifted expectation, and the students also have a different expectation of what they should be producing or the level of work that they can produce. And so we feel that this lack of communication and this feeling of not being present
Mm-hmm.
when you do your work really affects how students are able to process the information and the knowledge that they get, and to translate that into a good quality of work. But there are also students who actually use this opportunity to self-discover a lot of things. So we do actually find some students who are able to work independently. So that was quite interesting. So we have like this, there's always a mix of everything, right, in a whole
Mm-hmm.
batch. But yeah, that we find it's because on the lecturer's part, it's also quite difficult to consistently monitor, through a distant learning process, because we're so used to at campus, we drop by the studio and there's always going to be somebody working there, and then the commentary and the tutorial becomes quite informal, right? So I think it's almost the same in an office environment as well, because especially now we work on the basis of collaboration more than instructions.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also another shift in paradigm, I think, in trying to teach. Yeah.
Yeah, because architecture education is definitely not a typical, learning environment. There's a element of mentorship, apprenticeship, where
Exactly.
one-to-one learning, is fairly common, right? Like you mentioned, tutorial
Yeah.
and whatnot. But
Exactly.
in contrast to taught courses, the process is kind of slow and repetitive and may bear very little fruit, meaning that, to a person for a person to get progressively better in design take few semester or few years sometimes. And since student
Exactly.
has come to university today, has lived with a smartphone since their school days, how do you, and everything today can be instantly, be obtained through those smartphones. How do you think the teaching approach have been changed, especially when, post-COVID, and we have moved since the 2000s and now we are already in 2020?
uh you just reminded me of this, of somebody, or I think I read it somewhere.
Right.
Our phones are getting smarter, but are we really?
Yeah.
I think I mean, obviously we are getting smarter, but in the way that we have never knew before. We have never known before. I think it's a different a whole different lingo that goes on, when talking to the current, Gen Zs. My students were born in
Right.
2000. But relatively to how we were taught during our days, I think, besides the apps and the softwares and the unlimited amount of resources available online, I think it boils down to how we empower the students more than how they know how to use the tools, because we especially this generation, they are self-taught. uh, they know how to do things, they know how to mimic or replicate what they see, but that doesn't mean that they know the value behind it as they are doing it. So I think that's where we come in. So we always nowadays we always try to empower students by instilling more trust in them. So the studio is now a collaborative core, if I can say that. So we not only have critics from lecturers or external panelists towards the students' work, but we also have peer critics. We also have sessions where, because our campus also has LAM Part 2 students, which are our Master of Architecture students. So we sometimes have this like teaching assistant program or mentor-mentee program, so that the import and the export of knowledge happens in a very structured manner. So we are there to just guide them through, what they are supposed to gauge at that level of study. So I think that's this inquiry-based learning. I think that's the most difficult thing to do. It's not really how to navigate through the, through the programs and the softwares, but trying to train them to know what to ask and to know how to process what they see. I think that's the biggest challenge. But yeah, we were trying to
so it's less physical, like less like doing the drawing, and more towards the philosophical, more about value thinking and such. Okay, so
well,
I think
in my studio lah. I mean,
all right, okay.
Different studios actually have different approaches, but yeah, we try to, and we suit that to like different levels of study as well, because sometimes you cannot talk, about very philosophical things to like first year students.
Right, definitely.
Yeah.
So certainly today there's a lot of application technology and CAD program, BIM program software and whatnot. But since the MCO has been imposed, there's no longer they are no longer allowed to visit the site, or maybe in your case next semester they can't visit the site. So, and architecture is really a byproduct of its context. So in a way, what do you think the student can do to empathize, understand, and sort of touch the nuance and sensitivity of the architecture they are proposing? Because some students can really get lost in the in the pixel on their screen, per se.
Yes, as we have seen, as we have seen very often. But I think, although that's not necessarily always a bad thing, but I think the main issue here is losing that humanity part of the human connection, right? The human touch I mentioned just now.
Right.
You know what? We are still figuring it out. But I think, okay, so this is actually an actual issue, especially when we were doing research, topical studies, and also dissertation this semester. It was really impossible to get field data and so on. So we have to rely on desk analysis, and we have to rely on a lot of reading. So and I think this is something that we come to realize more and more, that you cannot be free, you cannot limit yourself from reading enough literature in architecture. Whether it be a blog, whether it be a magazine, or a textbook, or or books on philosophies and so on. Because I think in order to get that nuance, you really have to engage at a different level to the society, to the people, to your environment. So, and the only way with this, current restrictions, or the restrictions we had in the the earlier phase of NCO, um, there were no other options. We really had to rely on informed assumptions. We really had to
Mm-hmm.
rely on being able to empathize with, the situation that we read about, and also in terms of finding a solution towards, these issues. We really have to learn from what people have done, or what, not only in academia, but from people around the world, in practice, in different fields, in different disciplines. So I think it's always important to not only read, but also to stay connected and stay informed, and also to communicate, not only within, your community, but also outside. uh, at least it can kind of break that barrier to make your perspective more informed. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's another thing that happened to campus, near town or in the city center, I would say. There's a lot of things happening outside them. For example, social event, marketing, business opportunities, and they are very
Yes.
attractive, especially for
Yes.
students. They can make a few bucks on the side. And
Exactly.
while those exposure is good, definitely, I mean, you meet new people and whatnot, it certainly took a
Mm-hmm.
portion of the students' time. And some, we can see
Yeah.
some cases, they totally go off tangent. So how do you think they should manage their time in terms of things that are happening outside campus versus things that they should do inside campus?
This this dilemma of ask, asking students to have their own life outside of
Mm-hmm.
studio and asking them to do work at the same time. This is always there's never a correct or good advice to give.
Right.
Um, but I think but I think, anything that comes your way can be either an opportunity or they can be a distraction.
Mm.
It's up to you to decide based on how you prioritize. I think everything goes back to what your priorities are. And if you if if I were to give any advice on time management, I think you need to think long term, whether what you are getting into can benefit you in the long run. Either it be for networking or to create a platform for your product, or for your own, advancement, because we
Mm-hmm.
always have to add on new skills or to polish the skills that we already have. And know exactly what you want, you know.
Right.
If you want to do business, you do business. If
Right.
you want to become an architect and grad on time,
Mm-hmm.
if you have if you already have a plan for your life,
Mm-hmm.
career wise, at least, um, again, it goes back to prioritizing. You should know what you want and how to get it, and
Mm-hmm.
all these opportunities outside of campus is good, if they can contribute to that big plan.
All right.
So yeah, so have some structure in your life. Loosely plan your schedule, your day, your week, your month. Ikut you lah.
Mm-hmm.
Have a routine, so that if anything falls out of place, at least you have something to get back to.
Mm-hmm.
And find yourself a sparring partner or a partner in crime.
Mm-hmm.
Just so that they can reel you back in when they see you,
Yep.
go astray
To
so far.
to keep you in check lah, sort of. So
Yeah,
because
exactly.
they tend to be very short. It's a fast written, fast action, fast written kind of thing. I would not
Yeah,
mention any specific program, but definitely is very attractive to students. And I
yeah,
think as learning, as we go to higher learning institution itself, is already a challenge going from very regimented, very orderly high school days. Going into university is already a challenge. And when you get yourself into an architecture course, it's a whole another level, I presume, because there's a lot of self
exactly.
learning element in there, and they have to sort of
Yeah,
cope this demanding course intellectually, mentally, and physically to get through the study years. And then basically, breakdown, anxiety is normal lah, I would say. I myself admit that I have few of those moments. Maybe you can
Yeah.
talk a bit about how do we get there? How do we get to the finish line? What kind of mind frame should we adopt, or what kind of thinking that should we you know uh, equip ourselves before we get into the course?
Uh, okay. So talking about mindset, I think it's more to developing an attitude towards this new lifestyle that you are embarking in. So throughout this ups and downs, now you are already maybe halfway, or you're just a little bit more to the finishing, a little bit more to the finishing line.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's either you charge ahead or you just leave the race, if you even consider it as a race. I mean, I'm not saying that it's you should easily give up, but sometimes we need to reflect on what our priorities are, because this thing about mental health in architecture schools nowadays, I think it's getting a lot more acknowledgement.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, it's normal, it's a normal occurrence, but I don't think it should be normalized.
Yeah.
So first of all, get help. Do not feel embarrassed or feel bad about asking for help. Sometimes the help is not even like about mental health. Sometimes it's just, can you help me, can you help teach me draw this? I have a problem with, I really have no clue what I'm doing with technical drawing, for example. It can be something as technical as that, or it can be something as personal as, what, I have a problem with keeping order in my life. So find the right people, or the people who you are comfortable with, to get you through that. And if you feel that even after all the help that you can get, that you still feel you don't belong in this kind of lifestyle, or you feel that this lifestyle doesn't suit you, and you are losing more than it's worth, because health is everything, right? You have to be well in order to live. Then it's your choice. No stigma. You can leave the race. You can embark on a new journey somewhere else in something new. And the good thing about architecture is, because you are trained in a lot of different skill sets, it's not rare to see architecture students branching out, or architecture graduates or students, or even professionals branching out into other fields, quite seamlessly, I would say. That you don't lose anything, but if you feel that you want to get to the finish line, do not look back. Just do what you need to do and just charge ahead, and get there. There's no other advice I think can apply.
I felt sometimes that it's not like the individual problem per se. Maybe life throws something at them. For example, maybe one of their parents is passed away, or they have financial difficulties, stuff like that. And I think that can broke the best of us, I would say. And I think for this episode, thank you, Tini. We are at the end of it, and we hope we cleared some air about the architecture education. And stay safe, everyone. And please subscribe to QWA YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us. Until the next one. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed the session, be sure to subscribe to QWA YouTube channel, so you will be notified if a new episode is posted. Thank you for listening. Until next time.